All right, solving another equation here, and it's still a linear equation, and it has fractions. Don't let those fractions scare you. You know you get fractions all the time. Don't avoid this problem just because it has fractions, and I'm going to take you through it. As a matter of fact, sometimes you can do something that gets rid of all the fractions so you don't have to deal with them until the very end, and I'm actually going to show you that. I'm going to do this problem 2 times. I'm going to show you on the first time how to do it without having to deal with those fractions until the very end. Okay? So in either of these 2 cases, I'm going to have to distribute the 3/4 over there on the other side, the right side of the equation. So let's copy down the left. I've got x plus 3/2 is equal to, and now let's just do our distributing. I've got 3/4 times x is just 3/4 x. And then minus, because it's going to be a positive times a negative. Let me just do a little bit of math up here in the corner. I've got 3/4, and I'm multiplying this times a half, And when you multiply by fractions, you know, whoops, there we go. Just made some sort of weird mark there. What? You multiply top times top and bottom times bottom. So this is a 3 on top, a 3 on top, and 4 times 2 is an 8 on bottom. So 3/8 minus 3/8. Okay, so notice that you got a whole bunch of fractions in there. And whenever you go to add fractions, what you have to do is you have to make sure that all the denominators are the same. You got to get a common denominator. So instead of us adding all the fractions and subtracting what we need to, let's still get a common denominator. Let's still pretend like we need to get a common denominator. So we have a 2, a 4, and an 8. So the easiest way, if you don't know, to get a common denominator is to pick the biggest number, in this case an 8. And then you check to see if the other 2 numbers go into it. 2 goes into 8, yeah, and 4 goes into 8. So that means that 8 must be the common denominator. If it didn't work, what you would do is you would take the next multiple of 8. So 8 times 2 is 16, and then you would check to see if the numbers went into it. If it didn't, you would take the next multiple. 8 times 3 is 24, and you'd see if the other numbers went into it. That's usually the easiest way to find a common denominator. But I already know that 8 goes into everything, so that's what I'm going to write down. And so I'm going to distribute an 8 to everything in this little equation. So 8 times x makes this 8x plus, let's do a little bit of math here. I've got 3/2 that are multiplying times 8, 8 over 1. And I know, again, top times top, bottom times bottom is 24 over 2. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So I've got to write up plus 12 there. Let's erase this because I'm going to need the space. Okay, is equal to, now I got to do some more math. I got 3/4 times 8 over 1. So I'll show you another shortcut that maybe you learned sometime, that if there's a number in the bottom that goes into a number on the top, you can go ahead and divide it. Like 4 goes into 8 2 times. And this 4 on the bottom just becomes a 1. And then you can multiply straight across, and I have 6 over 1, which is just 6. 6, and don't forget the x. Now, if that didn't make sense to you, you could have still gone 3 times 8 is 24, and then 4 times 1 is 4. 24 divided by 4 is still 6. So you could still do it the long way. I'm going to erase it, move on to my next fraction, and I have a 3/8. It's going to be minus because a minus times a positive. 3/8 times 8. Put it over 1. And hey, look, this 8 with that 8, they cancel, and I'm just left with 3 over 1, which is just 3. And look, I've just taken my equation that used to have a whole bunch of fractions in it, and now I don't have any fractions at all. So let's go ahead and solve it. Let's get the x's on one side. I usually like to keep the x's wherever they're bigger and then bring the smaller ones over to it. So I'm going to subtract 6x from the right side, and if I subtract it over there, I have to do it over here on the left side. Okay, 8x.
Christy Tucker, if you're
8x minus 6x is 2x. Bring down the plus 12. These 6x's cancel, is equal to negative 3. Now subtract the 12 from this side. It's being plus 12, so I need to do the opposite, so I have to subtract it. Minus 12. And now bring down my 2x. These 12's cancel, is equal to negative 3 minus 12. They both have the same sign, so I'm going to add them up to negative 15. And then finally, that 2 that's in front of the x is multiplied, so I'm going to divide. Divide both sides by 2. These 2's will cancel, and I get x is equal to negative 15 halves. I can leave that as a fraction like that. That's okay. Or if you wanted to divide that, it would be a negative 7.5 to get a decimal. I don't care how you write your answer. That's acceptable. All right, so let's switch colors here, and let's pretend like, I didn't know how to do that. Or maybe I just totally don't understand. I'm going to switch to green. Maybe. There we go. And let's just deal with all the fractions. Deal with all the fractions. Let's pretend like I distributed here, so I have x plus 3 halves is equal to 3/4 minus 3/8. 3/4 x, I should say. Okay, so then I would do the same thing. I have more x's over here. There's one of them, and I need to take away 3/4 x on both sides. Minus 3/4 x. Okay, so on the left-hand side, if I have one thing and I take away 3/4 of it, what do I have left? I've got 1/4 x. Plus, bring down my 3 halves is equal to, these ones will cancel, minus 3/8. Okay, and now I need to subtract my 3 halves from both sides. It's being added, so I need to subtract 3 halves from both sides. Minus 3 halves. Those will cancel. And now whenever you subtract fractions or add fractions, you need a common denominator. So I take the big one again. It's 8. Does 2 go into 8? It does. So the common denominator is already 8. So I just need to get the other one to have a denominator of 8. What do you have to multiply 2 by to get 8? You got to multiply it times 4. So let's multiply both of the top and the bottom by 4. So this will become 3 times 4 is 12. And the 2 times 4 is 8. Now since they're both negative, just add them up. Okay, so let me bring down the 1/4. X is equal to, it's going to stay negative, and then I have a negative 3/8 minus 12/8. The bottom stays the same as 8s, and then you just add up the tops. So there's 15. And now I've got the 1/4 that I've got to deal with. At the very, very end, I've got to multiply both sides by 4. That's the reciprocal of 1/4. Just flip it over. So multiply both sides by 4 times 4 over here. So these will cancel, leaving me with just x is equal to, and remember the shortcut from over here, the 4 goes into the 8 2 times, and I get my negative 15 halves again that I got the other method. Whichever one of these makes the most amount of sense to you. I know that made one problem seem really, really long because we're already here at 8.5 minutes, but there you go.